Absolutely, and and we're absolutely living through this, and that's why we're wanting to get some initial thoughts of the group that's here, of what kind of words or feelings come to mind when you think about hybrid working. So that kind of that working from home, going into the office some of the time, what does that feel like? What sort of stuff come up for you when you start thinking of hybrid working? So this is also to kind of test that the polling is working as well. So there's a link in the chat that people can use, or you can use the phone as well, and use the Mentimeter app and put in the code. But so really interested to see what people think. Flexibility, absolutely.
You know, once we've come out of this, or we are still in this global pandemic, you know, we have different perspectives here. We've got scary, we've got freedom. You know, it brings with it change, which can be good, but can also be, I suppose, you know, a hindrance, and feeling like I'm feeling of spring up uncertainty around, well, where's this going to lead to, and what does that mean for me and my family and the life that I live?
And your time management is a huge one. You know, connected to flexibility as well. And you know, I can certainly say, you know, over the last couple of years, you know, this changing to this sort of model has completely changed how I deal with kind of time management, you know, across my whole life. You know, from drop-offs and pickups from kids to you know, just all those logistics of when you do things, you know, around work as well. So I think what's interesting with this is that it becomes that kind of whole of life approach, for good and for bad as well, because there are some scary elements to it as well. One of them being that you're never away potentially. You know, you're always connected, and being able to get that disconnection can be increasingly hard.
It can be very difficult. It can be very grating on mental health as well, and well-being and overall. But I think, you know, as we talk about a bit later, you know, how does this affect our health and well-being?
So thanks for that, for those responses. And one thing I kind of like to really point out here is that, you know, in many ways, we personally think that we've kind of went through the looking glass in some ways. That what's happened over the last 2 years since the pandemic hit has turbo boosted many things that were already bubbling along for a while, but brought forward a lot of big changes that potentially were going to happen over the decades ahead, but brought it all down onto a very personal level. So, you know, as we all know, it's nearly 2 years ago, which I can't quite believe, but it's, you know, 2 years ago in March 2020, the pandemic hit, and, you know, depending where you are in the world, different levels of restrictions and changing to your working environment, we were all thrown into this experiment virtually overnight, which is interesting because when we were doing our training, Christiane, we were told if you're going to go to remote working, don't do it overnight, make it gradual, you know, build things up. But what happened was we were just all thrown into it.
Yes.
Now, here in Melbourne, we were in, you know, significant lockdowns for most of the last 2 years. We had over 260 days of virtually being confined to, you know, to a 5 or 10 kilometer radius from our house, and, you know, let alone not being able to go into the office. And during that time, obviously, new habits are going to appear, and that's a significant amount of time for those new habits to come together. There's all sorts of research about, you know, how long it does take to create the new habits. But, you know, one example is that, you know, James Clear, who's a famous author from New York Times, it says, you know, 66 days. Once you're kind of getting over that kind of 2 months, then that's when these sorts of new habits will really take an effect. And it's not been 2 months; it's been 2 years now. So those new habits have been really ingrained, potentially even more than that. And James Clear talks about this in his book Atomic Habits, is that it also changes the identity of, you know, who you want to be. I was talking to Christiane about this yesterday. I just don't see myself as a 9 to 5 office worker anymore. That kind of identity is kind of gone. And because that identity is gone, that North Star has changed, then so many habits that support that are also kind of radically changing as well.